Good morning, Trinity students, third and fourth grade. This is all new to me, so we are trying to do some videos for you to see if this will help you with your work. I will be doing several videos today. The first one I'd like to do is the religion, so I need you to have your religion book out and turn to lesson 29. That's the one we're doing this week. I have made a copy of the Bible story for you to read along with me. I didn't know how many of you had Bibles, but if you want to use your own Bible, that is fine. If you don't have a Bible or you'd rather read along with me, that is fine also. All we are going to do with the religion part is just read the story, and that's it. I'm not asking questions and I'm not giving you a test over it. I think it's important, though, that you read the story. So if you are on page 99 in your book, it is lesson 29. The name of the story is Jesus' trial before the high priest and Pontius Pilate. It is found on John chapter 18, verse 12 through 19, verse 16. We have four New Testament terms with this story: Annas, Caiaphas, Pontius Pilate, and Barabbas. So if you would turn in your glossary to page G19, I will read these New Testament terms to you. First one is Annas. It's about in the middle of the page. He was the father-in-law to Caiaphas, the high priest, and the man who was the real power behind his son-in-law at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. Jesus was taken to this man first after his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. Our second New Testament term is Caiaphas, the official high priest and head of the Sanhedrin at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. If you remember, the Sanhedrin is like our today's court. He was a man who prophesied, "It is expedient for us that one man should die for the people." That is found in John 11, verse 50. Our next New Testament term is Pontius Pilate. He was the Roman official under whose authority Jesus was sentenced to death. And our last New Testament term, Barabbas. He was the guilty man who was released in the place of the innocent man, the robber, insurrectionist, and murderer whom Pilate released at the Passover because the Jews demanded his freedom in exchange for Jesus' death. Now I'd like you to read the story with me, and when we're done, I'll click off and that'll be it. So if you have your paper like I have here that I printed for you, we're going to start at John chapter 18, verse 12. It's about in the middle of your page. It says, "So the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that it would be expedient that one man should die for the people." Peter denies Jesus. Verse 15. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood outside at the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl who kept watch at the door, and brought Peter in. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, You also are not one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I am not. Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest questions Jesus. We're on verse 19 now. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me and what I said to them. They know what I said. When he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now, Peter denies Jesus again. I'm on verse 25. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself, so they said to him, You also are not one of the disciples, are you? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter again denied it, and at once a rooster crowed. Jesus before Pilate, verse 28 or 29, what is it? I can't. 28. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, What accusation do you bring against this man? They answered him, If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. Pilate said to them, Take him yourself and judge him by your own law. The Jews said to him, It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die. My kingdom is not of this world. Verse 33. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, Do you say this of your own accord, or did others, turn the page, say it to you about me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting for what might not be fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world. Then Pilate said to him, So you are a king? Jesus answered, You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Pilate said to him, What is truth? After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? They cried out again, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. And we are on chapter 19. Jesus delivered to be crucified. And before I go on to chapter 19, if you're reading along with me on the paper, I didn't copy it very good. I'm sorry. I cut off some of the one or two of the letters from each word towards the bottom here. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourself and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He entered his headquarters again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. So Pilate said to him, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me unto you has the greater sin." We're at the top of the page, verse 12. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Behold your king." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." So he delivered him over to them to be crucified. This is the end of our story this week. I hope you followed along, and we'll go on to the next video.